Okay, welcome to AfterWords number 5. We're going to do this one a little differently. We've been doing AfterWords after every other episode of Believers and Nonbelievers in discussion, but the interest hasn't been quite as high for these, so we're going to just kind of do these on occasion as there is need and not routinely. This is a less formal format than the other one. So we're just going to kind of let it fly. There's some leftover questions and material that Kelly particularly had for me, so I'm going to kind of give him the floor on this one, and I will react, and then at some point we'll go into the Q&A for the audience. So, how's it going, Kelly?
Great. No problems whatsoever. Well, other than what usually comes along with life, right?
Let me ask you one question.
Okay, go.
How do you think this whole thing has been going? I mean,
I like it. I think it's great. It's good to know that we can get together and talk. Yeah. You know, because a lot of times, and I'm not saying, any particular point of view, but a lot of times things get so ingrained that you're ready to pull the trigger. When you're talking to somebody, you're ready to pull the trigger on them. And instead of just having conversation, and it might get, pointed. That's okay. Yeah. You have your beliefs, and those are things that you'll defend or to try to evaluate and come with a decent conclusion. But it's nice to be able to sit down with people that don't have the same viewpoint as you do and be able to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
It's good. And there's some that doesn't happen that way. There's lots of groups. I have a picture of one of them here that are, on either side. I can pick out, I have a picture of them here, and this is disturbing. That this kind of stuff, that somebody that believes in God would actually hold up signs like this. It's just staggering to me. This is a particular group. They're called the Westboro Baptists.
Westboro Baptists, yeah.
And they're just. I find them to be obscene in what some of the things they say. They show up to people that have served in the military and have died defending our country. They show up to those events and tell them that their kid went to hell, this and that. And it's just, to me, that's just angry. It's not drawing anybody to, who I assume they're trying to serve, which I don't think they are, but that's not drawing anybody to Jesus. And on the other hand, somebody like Richard Dawkins, who is so vitriolic in his statements about people who believe in God, that I think both of those sides are just they're getting. I don't think they're drawing anybody to their ideas in that.
The Phelps are an interesting case because.
Well, it's a small group. It's only maybe 10 or 12 people.
It's one family. Yeah. It's one family.
They call it a church, but it's really a family.
I mean, the teachings were based on what the grandfather's interpretation was, and they believed, at least in that generation, they believed that they were doing good. So they had reasons behind what they were doing. We're getting that information now as the next generation is out. The grandfather is no longer around. Nathan Phelps is online. I think Marianne Phelps is another one who just did an interview with Joe Rogan, actually. I recommend that.
I haven't. You pay more attention to them than I do. I dismiss them.
It's interesting because she was a daughter in the family, or a granddaughter in the family, and she is now an atheist. And it's not so much the conversion to atheism, but her conversion from going within the family to being one of those people holding up these signs to someone who realized that wasn't a good thing to be doing in society. So it's really a fascinating interview. So
I'm not surprised she left. If that's what she was taught, I'm not surprised she left.
Yeah. But the interesting point was that even though it looks such an evil thing they're doing, they believe they're doing good.
Sure.
There's a logic to what they're doing, even though that it's it's really easy to look at it as these are just evil.
Well, when you hold up signs like this is just that's vile. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And by the same token, like I said, some of the stuff that Dawkins says is vile as well. He's he's putting out the notion that something we'll talk about that somehow or another he's put out the notion that science has disproven the fact that there's an afterlife, and I think that's a dispiriting thing to do, because a lot of people would like to live after this life, and for Dawkins to say something like that is, well, first of all, it's unproven, but for him to say something like that, he's stepping on a lot of people's beliefs, and he's doing it he's not doing it in a friendly manner. I disagree with you. I think for this reason there may not be. He's doing it in an aggressive manner, and saying things that are pretty uncomplimentary.
Yeah, Dawkins, he's also an interesting one. I mean, because with Dawkins, you've got someone who's gone from, he's been publishing since the 70s. Mm-hmm. The first generation new atheists, let's say the Hitchens and Dennett, and to a lesser degree
Hitchens was actually rather funny. I could listen to him and chuckle at him. I didn't agree with him, but he was funny. He was a funny guy.
Different thing, but yeah. But Dawkins, I think that generation of new atheists,
mm-hmm.
the first generation of new atheists, I think made an assumption that if somebody, as an example, didn't believe in the age of the earth as whatever scientific thing
mm-hmm.
that was the consensus opinion at the time, that the other side was ignorant and dumb, and all you had to do was explain them the right answer, and then they would get it. And what we've found out over the last 25, well, actually longer, 40 years, is that it's more complex than that. There's psychology behind it. Dawkins knows that stuff now, so his tone has changed somewhat, but he's also a fairly impatient guy, right? So, and we've all seen that.
Yeah.
So it comes across more harshly than others, and
well, yeah, he's. I still find, I don't know whether I've listened to him every once in a while. Certainly don't follow him around, or I don't listen to his dialogue all the time. But the ones that I've done, and they haven't been that long, haven't been that long ago. He may have, like you said, he may have toned it down a little bit, in that he doesn't use the same wording that he used to use, but he's still pretty, shall we say, confronted?
I don't know that he's toned it down, honestly. But I know.
Well, I mean, the speech that he gave about, for example, the God of the Old Testament. The speech that he gave.
Yeah.
And
which is that he's quoting all these adjectives that God is this evil, horrible person, and he's pulling adjectives out of the Old Testament,
mm-hmm.
and some that he added himself.
Well, some that are current that he's. Yeah. Anyway. I think those are types of things. How it started all off was the idea that you could have a decent conversation with somebody without having to resort to that.
Yeah.
That's how we started this whole thing off, not trying to pick on the Westboro Baptists as much as I like to, or pick on Dawkins, which I like doing that too. But other than that, just to say that I like this too. I like to be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody.
And what the challenge I see for people like that, and for me too, trying to find out where's the balance, because I want to maintain a friendly line of communication, mm-hmm. is that some people are very interested in learning what is true and promoting that. And obviously there's a difference of opinion among many people on what is true. Mm-hmm. Now, so that creates conflict. So I think we have to collectively figure out what fights we want to have, and so there is what's true, and then there is what's true, but if someone practices it really does no harm, versus what's true and it does harm in society. And those are the points that I think, and people like Dawkins, early first generation Dawkins, have really followed that line of this is true. If you don't agree with it, sorry, you don't know. I've tried to educate you. Doesn't work. Or if it didn't work, he'd sort of get mean and throw up his hands. And
well, what he thought was true. Of course, I disagree with him about.
Yeah, well, that's
probably
pretty
just
much
about everything
at this point. But
other than the fact he needs to put his shoes on in the morning, I would imagine that I disagree with him on just about everything.
To put his shoes. Oh,
he has to put his shoes on in the morning. So do I. So from that point forward,
so wearing
we probably
shoes,
don't agree on much.
Shoes is civilized. We determine that.
Yeah. So you want me to? Well, let me start with something. Just
Go for it.
just a verse from the Bible, and it kind of explains where I kind of came from when I first started trying to figure out whether it was a God or not. It's 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. It says, "Beloved," which is how he terms this, which I like that part. "Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." This is one of the verses that really struck me when I first started trying to figure out whether it was God or not. There's lots of other ones, but this is one of them, in that, to me, before I came to know God, I didn't really care that much. If somebody started talking to me about it, I would look for the same thing I'm looking for now. I would look for some sort of proof that there actually is this being around. And when I first started deciding, certain situations that arose in my life that I needed to look, and one of the things I wanted to look for was evidence. And here's something that was at church today. The idea that science can actually test for God is nonsense. At least the one that's written in the Bible. He's outside of our time frame. He's outside of our dimensions. So can science? I think I brought this up in one of their discussions we had. Can science actually measure, weigh, test, repeat the scientific method on something that's outside our time frame? Of course not. There's no way for science to determine whether or not God exists from a strict scientific viewpoint. Now, if you want to go into historical science and try to figure out whether or not testimonies depict God, you can certainly do that. But as far as verifiable science, weights, measures, repeatable evidence, holding something in your hand and being able to determine it, I find that silly. My pastor at my church is a microbiologist, and he was talking about it today, so that's ridiculous to try to consider that you could do that. Okay. You can't. Now, you can look at some philosophy that would maybe take into account some empirical type of clues to his existence. I think you can do that. And certainly that's something that we do. So that's
there's like three things to answer
right.
to. I want to try to.
I want to get into what I was talking about with Billy too, but let's do this first.
Okay. So, can science test for God? I've said many times that nobody can prove God exists or doesn't exist in 100%.
In a testable scientific way, that I can test like this water's cold.
Well, not even science.
At a certain pinch.
I'm talking all
temperature.
methods. I'm talking science, philosophy, concept. You on an absolute level, you can't prove or disprove. So people who go down that road they're just really pushing a preference. But when you look at that concept of can science test for God, there's first off you're providing an assumption, not you specifically, but whoever makes that claim, of what God is. And usually they will say something like outside of space and time, and that is a definition that...
Well, that's the one that Christians teach. Then there's lots of other ones.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But it's a definition that is basically put down as an assignment. It's just a statement. So right up front, we don't know if that statement is true. I mean, God could be anything else. But so we've defined... Well, you've chosen the Christian God.
Yeah, let me redefine that. It's the Hebrew as well, because of course his description comes in
because it's the same.
Right.
It's the same deity. It comes from the same Bible, the Old Testament.
His description comes around not from the Second Testament, it's from the first. So I would say that the one described in the Hebrew and Christian.
Right, but when you say
so
God,
my point is that, like, for example, if you like what I sent to you today, and you talked a little bit about it online, as far as like the one that the Hindus try to portray, like I said to you today, that's where I would have been introduced to that. I would say, well, I'm sorry, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, you can't evaluate it and come to a conclusion on it. And in the Eastern thought, that's really not where they go anyway. Evaluation and things like that is really not, that's more of a Western thing. than an Eastern thing.
Yeah, and in the Eastern thing, it's the
It's different.
What is it? The back of a turtle?
Yeah,
What was
the
the
universe
phrase?
or the Earth sits on the back of a
Sits on
turtle.
the back of a turtle.
And the
Okay.
way they look
Which-
at it is we look at it as a Western thought pattern and idea. They don't look at it that way. They look at it as, I don't know, spiritual or something. I don't know. I don't know that much about Eastern thought.
So-
but I know it's different.
So their concept is the Earth sits on the back of a turtle.
Turtles. I think more
Turtles?
than one. Yeah, I think
All
more
right.
than one. One couldn't have called it all. It had to be more than one.
So, and then you've got the Christian one, which says, and this is by interpretation even by itself, but that God is outside of space and
Well,
time. That's the current.
Right. The
That's
first
the current
first chapter of Genesis says in the beginning.
interpretation.
Right. But in the first chapter it says in the beginning, time. God created the heavens,
Right.
space, the earth, matter, and a little later it says, let there be light. That's energy. So
But see,
they're describing
those
it-
are both assumptions at the very first.
Well, I'm just saying that that's the one that I will defend, and I will
Okay.
defend that
and the
description
point,
of
the
it.
point I'm trying to
Yeah.
make here is that both of them have to be proven. If you're going to examine either of them, if you're going to examine these,
Mhm.
they have to be considered. So, or just realize that there's a low level assumption going on here, even at that point, that may or may not be true.
There's an evaluation
So-
to make if that's what you mean. I agree with that. I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at though. To evaluate the points made.
Is it how much of, okay, let's go to the Christian,
Mhm.
the Christian God, the Abrahamic God.
Mhm.
How much of the outside of time and space is, how much of that is presupposition?
If God exists, then it's reasonable to think that He's going to send us a message saying, "Hi, I'm here." If He didn't do that, then
why would
he's-
that be
if-
reasonable as opposed to Him not?
Okay,
Why,
well,
why would one be more
kind of rabbit
valid?
trailing a little bit here, but let me.
One
Okay,
more
so
valid than the other.
if He made relational beings, which He did, all of us are relational beings, and taking into account the fact that He made relational beings, let's just go down that road for a
You
minute.
just mean interactive by
Yeah,
relational?
relational. There's reasons to believe and logical reasons to believe that that's how He is. If He made relational beings, why would He make relational beings if He doesn't want a relation with them? Seems logical.
Oh, He would
And-
want to, not relation to each other, not interaction with each other, but
He wants that
interaction
too.
between the
He wants that too.
between the being and God.
In my opinion, that's why we're still
just,
here.
everything you say is like got an assumption in it. Every sentence
No.
you say has.
Well,
got
we're
an
not
assumption
relational
in it.
beings.
Well, okay, so
Okay, that's
well,
not
we
an
are to a
assumption.
degree. We are independent beings in this
We
world.
desire for relationship.
To some, depends on the person.
I think all of them do. Even
Well, it
even
depends.
relations
It
with
depends.
animals,
because there's
whatever.
different types of relations. We have positive relations. We have negative relations. We have relations where we support each other. We have relations where we take advantage of each other.
And some people like animals better than humans. But
So if you want
still
to call that relationship relational
Mhm.
in that sense, in that there are multiple ways to go.
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
He made us that way.
Okay.
And
That's
that part,
an
that's assumption. That's an assumption
So that's
based on the fact that me thinking that we are created. Yes.
All right. So
That's
I'm
an
just trying to
assumption.
lay.
I think it's a strong assumption, but we're not going. I think we're going to go a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's. And if you're talking about, if you're going to bring up the subject of does God exist, well, it's God. You can't bring up the subject of evaluating who God is from a point where you don't think He is.
Okay.
You have to, if you're going to evaluate it, you have to consider, okay, well, does He or doesn't He? Take both sides.
I won't go there because I
Yeah.
don't want to take you too
All right.
far off the field.
All right.
Okay, I guess that's enough of going down that road. So,
Well, I mean, as far as the relational part, there was something going towards that. Now, I don't know. I'm old, so I forgot. Where were you going?
well, I'm trying to
'Cause
point
tell
out
me,
that
we got lots of time,
at the,
right?
I'm
Yeah.
trying to point out that at the base of what you're doing, there are assumptions that are not.
Between the one the Hindus portray, between the one that really the one the Christians portray, the one the Hebrews portray, the one the Muslims portray,
Right.
because they're all different.
Right.
And they're basically different. They're different at the core.
And between a naturalistic view, we got a fourth one if you want to throw that on the table.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's lots of other ones too,
There's-
but they're different in that. I have somebody who's I was talking to one on Thursday night. Somebody who believes there is a God but that could be anyone. You believe in Allah, you believe in Zoroaster, whoever that is, you believe in Zeus. Doesn't really matter. They all lead to the same spot. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't make much sense. If you're going to evaluate the claim, then evaluate it from what's said. And I'm not picking on Islam, so I'm just going to start off with that because I know a little bit about it. Islam says that if Muhammad was the last prophet, Jesus was a prophet, but he wasn't God. And that's what the book states, and I go by what they say. If you go to the Bible, it says different than that. And if neither of them could be true, I understand that. Neither could be true. But these people that try to say that both are true, I'm sorry, that's not logical. Because they say different, they say opposite things.
It's not a problem of both are true. It's a problem of both sides. This is where the conflict comes in. It's a problem of both sides saying mine is true. And
well, they do.
And then,
yeah. But my point's not that. My point is that someone that says, they all say the same thing. Well, they just don't. They're completely different. So that's my point, is that there's a basic description of who this person is that I believe is there, and you have to evaluate it by the descriptions given. And that's what I'm getting at. If you're going to consider him, then you're going to consider which one has the right version of him. They're different.
So you believe at the base of this argument, at the base of this, I guess we'll call it worldview. I don't know if that's
yeah.
That God exists, and I believe at the base of this that is a less likely to be true evaluation. So I believe in either a naturalistic world or basically a naturalistic world where if there is supernatural, we have no way to evaluate that because we don't have access to it.
Well, scientifically, me and you agree on that.
Yeah.
Because something that's outside our time domain and outside our space domain, how are you gonna take a ruler out?
What's interesting is that when you say outside of time and space, you're very confident that evaluation of what's outside in time and space is actually there. And I'm saying we have no access to that area to make an evaluation.
Yeah, but it's reasonable to assume, and again, you can't measure it, so that's what I'm getting at, and you agree on that. It's reasonable to assume they're there. Because if we had a beginning, the statement is anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, and that's a strong argument.
Well, let's not go there. Yeah, we can get to it if we have time.
Yeah, if we have time.
But that's where we differ. That's where we differ. I think your evaluation is underjustified. I'll just put it that way.
Okay.
At that level.
That's why we're sitting here, because we agree to disagree.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So you want me to head on to the task at hand?
Yeah. Go for it.
It's something that you brought up here recently. You're going to have a discussion with what's his name? Michael Schumer. The what's his name? What is it? Or magazine? Skeptics magazine. Right?
Michael Schumer?
Yeah. Aren't you going to have a discussion with him?
No.
Maybe I got an old
post.
But
no.
Okay. All right. I got an old post.
We work for free here, so.
$7,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect.
If he just to come over and sit down with you and talk.
Yep.
Oh, I would, but as
lot
far
of
as I know, he's a paid speaker.
Okay.
As are many.
Right.
We're doing this.
I saw a picture of you shaking hands with him. I assume it's at symposium or something.
Yeah.
And I thought you said you were going to do an interview with him. I must have.
No.
Been
I don't have access
dreaming
to
about that. Maybe it was.
No, it was an annual meeting of the Skeptic Society, and he had brought in a number of speakers, and got my picture with him.
So let's talk about skepticism for a second. I think that's an important thing for everybody to consider, the skepticism. Okay. So let me give you a couple pictures here. These are pictures from a guy by the name of Ron Wyatt, and he went to a place called Mount Ararat, which, if you guys know anything about the Bible, that's where the ark was supposed to have landed. And he came up with some pictures. I'll show the first one first. I don't know how well this is going to come across because it was a color picture and I printed it out. But I don't know. I'll try to describe it. There's this structure here. And if you consider it might look like a boat, right? It could. But skepticism has to come into play here. So I did a little bit of research into this because when they bring stuff up to me, I'm a Thomas. If you guys know the Thomas in the Bible, he was a guy that said, "Show me." And he was called Doubting Thomas. That's his name forever. And I'm kind of like that. So when I saw this, I said, well, it'd be nice I don't think it makes that much difference, but it would be nice. But I started looking into it, and first things first, this mountain called Ararat, that wasn't named that until, I think, 12th or 13th century. So that may or may not be Mount Ararat that the Bible talks about. Matter of fact, some people think that it's not. Best description is it's somewhere east of Iran, current day Iran. But if I was going to evaluate this thing and determine whether this was the ark or not, I'd need a lot more evidence than this. Here's another one kind of showing the dimensions, which fit to a certain extent. He measured out how far those things are apart, and measures out close. Not exact, but close. So if I was going to evaluate this and determine whether it to be true, I would need a lot more stuff than what's shown there. That's a picture of a boat. The argument could be made is, okay, a boat's there. Let's say there was a boat, and it was that big. That could have been a lake that was, at that time, distant past. The water was there, and that boat was there, and going up and down this lake. Let's say it's a pretty good sized one.
Is this just to clarify, is this a stone formation right now? So you're suggesting it's been petrified?
Well, yeah, it's stone now.
It's stone now.
And it's reasonable to consider that something that's built of wood over time is going to turn into stone. But let me make my point here, because
that's all.
I'm very, very skeptical about this, okay? And this is why. So we have that little bit. There's been a few little bolts found, at least they think they're bolts, around it, which, would be, if they're going to put a wood bolt, trying to keep it together, they would put maybe dowels in it or something, or maybe further along some metal. There was a couple found, but to try to say this is Noah's Ark, for me to come here and say, look, I found Noah's Ark, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about, what was the word you used? Presuppositionalism. Not evaluating the evidence, just because I know Noah's Ark is around and I want to believe that this is it, then I would come here and I'd start trying to tell you guys this is Noah's Ark. I would need to see a heck of a lot more than what that picture is right there. I would need to see some, what I think, like you kennel a dog, you put him in a cage if you don't want him to run around the house and chew things up, in a decent sized cage. I'm saying kenneling. I would think that would be one of the ideas that I would have for how the ark was constituted, and if there was some of that around it, they'll give me a better idea of maybe it's it. But realistically, in my mind, a wooden boat lasting for 4,000 years, probably not. We're probably not ever going to find that. So I'm skeptical about this kind of stuff. And me and you talked about that on books that people say they've gone to heaven and come back. They might have. But some of the things I would have to evaluate is, did they write a book that they want to sell? If they wrote a book that they want to sell, that I went to heaven and came back, that raises my level of skepticism, because are they just trying to make money? Now, it might be true. I'm not saying that those ones that claim it aren't true, because maybe. But that's something that I would be skeptical about, because they're trying to make money off of it. That would be a reason. And this guy going out there, another point I wanted to make, Ron Wyatt, you can say he has a presupposition that this is going to exist, right?
You have to be a little careful with the word presupposition, because
he's got it in his mind. Let's say bias instead.
The presupposition would be, presupposition is pre-evidence. So the presupposition would be Noah's Ark existed, period. Okay. Presupposition, all right. So when you get into that, the way you seem to be describing it is, it is something that may be as a hypothesis, and then, so now you're evaluating the strength of the evidence,
right? And
that's when you get into the bias.
And my point is this: he went there to the area of what's called I forgot now Ararat. He went there with the idea is, I'm going to look for the ark. It's a reasonable conclusion. He thinks it exists. He goes there to look for it, and he found some place that he thinks might be it. That's a common course when people that are, Ron Wyatt's not a scientist, but he wants to go look for things. And that's a common course for people that believe in something, scientists as well, that they're going to go and look for things. So now let me get to my point. So when...
Belief. Because I'm tough on belief.
Okay.
He wants it to be true.
Yes, he does.
So that's his personal bias. Now, hopefully he's aware of his personal bias, so he's going out and he's looking and trying to keep that in mind to make sure that doesn't cloud his judgment.
Yeah.
So I would not call that a belief at that point. You have a hypothesis. I mean, the same thing happens in science, right? You have you have a little bit of evidence, and you want to find out if this is actually and you theorize or hypothesize what it could be, or what the cause is, and then you go investigate further. So you don't have belief going on yet. You basically have a held position. You may hope it proves something, but you're still in a holding pattern. You're still in an evaluation.
Yeah, I think if you're a reasonable person, you have a belief about something, but if you're going to go to look for it to say for sure you're going to find it, well, you're kind of taking a leap of.
So you're not going to back off on this.
Well, I'm just
again, I don't.
Okay.
So
what's your point? Tell me your point. Let me understand
at this
better.
level where he has seen this formation and he's going out to investigate further. He wants it to be true because it would support the Bible and he likes the Bible. And, but I would not call that a belief that it's the ark. He would go out and try to find evidence, find corroborations.
Sure.
So the belief has yet to be formed.
I'm not sure what you're getting at. Well, I'm pretty sure Ron Wyatt believes the ark I believe Ron. Let me put it this way. I believe Ron Wyatt believes that the ark story is true.
Do you believe
now whether Ron Wyatt believes?
Do you believe he believed it? The belief came when he went to look at that formation. That's all I'm saying. At that point, as you're telling the story, we don't have belief yet. We have hypothesis, and he's trying to put together evidence to solidify whether or not this information he has will justify a belief. A belief would be a conclusion that it is more likely to be yes than no. And he would like it to be yes, so he has to be careful with his bias, but it's not a belief yet. It is a hope, if you will, if you want to use that word. So
I don't know. I'm not sure why we're haggling over the word belief, but
well,
I'm trying to figure out why it was important. Because I mean, would you rather me interchange the word understanding, or I don't know?
No, I guess it's a definition of what forms of belief.
He had a certain. Let me try it a different way. He had a certain idea that he had in his head.
That's a hypothesis.
Okay, and he wanted to find evidence for it.
That's what you do with a hypothesis. Okay. You go find evidence to support it, and it comes out positive or negative.
Then theory, then law. Yeah. So he's going there with a thought in mind.
Okay.
What he's looking for, and he believes, understands, projects, whatever word you want to use, that to be true. And he thinks that this is the place it's going to be. He's done some evaluation there too. He read the Bible. He said it's on Mount Ararat. I don't think he read very much, but that's where he thinks it is. Now, I find several problems with that. First of all, if this was actually the same place, Pangea exists, me and you agree with that. You think the time frame was longer ago than I do, but Pangea did exist.
Yeah.
And the idea that everything is going to be exactly as it is right now, it's just not. Uniformitarianism just doesn't work because things have changed a lot over time. Okay, so let me get to my point.
Yeah.
So now we're going to come to a young lady by the name of, I'm just going to go by the short word because I have a heck of a time with her name, Lucy. So now we're going to do some evaluation on Miss Lucy. This is a picture of the actual bones that were found.
Wait a second. I'm sorry. So what's happening to this story?
It's correlating, but let me get to it.
So we're leaving him.
We're leaving this, and I'm going to make some points here.
All right.
Okay. So this is Lucy. A skeleton found. The ark. A little bit of evidence found. So let's evaluate the evidence, shall we? So Mr. Johansson, when he went to find Lucy, had a belief that Lucy existed. And he went to find it, just like Mr. Wyatt did. He had a belief that the ark existed. You want to say understanding, idea, whatever. So he had a belief that it existed.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
You correct me if you think
okay.
I'm wrong. So his belief was that there were transitional.
Yeah, he has a belief there's
transitional forms of man.
Of many kinds, but I think his main intent was finding one for man. For man.
From what?
For man. The transitional form to man.
So he believed there were transitionals, and he was looking to find one within a certain time period that would show
he believed
show a link between more
primates, ape-like, and humans.
And
right. Okay. And to that point, there really wasn't very good evidence for it. that's the reason why Lucy supposedly stands out so much. So when Billy was talking, she made a lot of points, and
Billy is, if you go back to our Believers, Non-Believers, the methodology of historical science, you'll see that one. So
she brought up a lot of points about Lucy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about those and the correlation between Mr. Johnson and Mr. Lovejoy, I think his name was. The correlation between them and Mr. Wyatt. They're both going to look for things that they believe to be true. Understand, idea, whatever word you want to use. They believe it to be true. They haven't found it yet, but they're going there to look for it. And the mindset is, in their mind, they said, okay, we believe that this worldview, I'll use that word, is true, and we believe we're going to find evidence for it. Ron Wyatt did the same thing. He believes this worldview is true, and he's going to try to go find evidence for it. So I don't find that, like I think has been brought up many times, and sometimes by the moderator, that seems to imply that Christians have this presupposition that things that they're going to find are true. I find both sides to be that way. Mr. Johansson and Mr. Lovejoy went looking for this because they believed it to be true. They have a presupposition that Lucy was going to be around. Just like Mr. Wyatt said.
Again, I have to argue the word presupposition, because presupposition is basically out of nowhere. Presupposition does not have evidence to it. The evidence
I agree.
In both of these.
This had no evidence before they found this.
It did have evidence.
No, this is the main one.
Let me finish my sentence.
All right, I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
And this is the distinction here.
Okay.
I mean, you've got evidence on both of these conceptually. Over here, you've got your evidence is that the Bible says there was a boat, so you're going to expect, and then the Bible is pretty specific about what size the ark was. So
it was very specific.
There are some information he has to work with. You can add a little variable to the credibility of the Bible as a book, but these have been it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's not like the guy sat down and said, I think there's a thing in Turkey that probably looks like a boat.
We think there's a spacecraft on the top of Mount Ararat.
Just with absolutely no basis.
Right.
That's presupposition. There's where you just start from zero.
Well, when we were talking today, you made the statement. Okay, go ahead.
Before we get too deep, because we easily get off track.
Right.
We're trying not to.
Easily.
So here, you have evolutionary evidence of a lineage of everything from a single cell to vertebrates to various branches of the evolutionary tree.
They don't have that. I'm sorry, they don't.
Okay.
But
Let me just say, to the degree
we disagree on that. Okay.
Yes, we do.
I just want to get
to the degree that they had it when they were before they found Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
There was, and the scientific consensus was that this was true. So that was his base information, and then also you had information from the hominid lineage. So in science, what you do is you have a certain amount of information, and then that information allows you to create predictions.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is true and if this is true, the prediction, you can predict what kind of comes in between. One would lead to find predictions of the theory that you have, the hypothesis that you have. So then you go to look for the things that were predicted.
Mm-hmm.
If you find them, it then supports the whole line of argument. If you don't find them,
me and you are making the same point.
Okay.
Me and you are making the same point. They have an idea when they go out. They want to try to prove it. Now, if you want to talk about the ark, now again, I don't think this is the ark. But to say that Ron Wyatt went out with a wild harebrained scream that had no evidence beforehand, that's just not true. You know that. There's stories throughout civilizations and all different cultures of a flood. There's stories throughout. There's documentation. Maybe you guys heard me say, no, Rebecca, you've heard it, so you're probably going to get bored with me on this. But there's documentation for it. The Chinese culture in the Ming Dynasty, 2200 BC, 700 years before Moses wrote the book about Genesis. He didn't live through it. He wrote his history. If you evaluate that that's a historical tale, then you would see other documentation of it. And I believe the fact that the almost universal depiction of a flood is evidence for it. Besides that, Ming Dynasty, which is 700 years prior to Moses writing the story of a history story that was dictated, I believe, on Mount Sinai by God, the Ming Dynasty had a symbol for boat. They had a cuneiform writing, which is symbols put together to make more complex ideas. Their symbol for boat, as you know, I've said it to you many times, is 8-person rescue vessel. And to consider that coming along 700 years prior to Moses writing it, you have to evaluate why that might be there. I think a good evaluation, an honest evaluation, which I think Mr. Wyatt took into account, was that there's a lot of written evidence that this flood happened. And what's one of the best ones is that Ming Dynasty one. I've read a book by it. I get the title, I don't remember it. It's Genesis, I think, in Chinese cuneiform is the name of the book.
I'll disagree on the credibility of that, but let's let that aside and go. So cross over and make your point here.
Make my point. So I believe my point is this. I believe both these guys went out with ideas on what they were going to find. And the evaluations after that is what I want to talk about, because Billy made a lot of illustrious statements about Miss Lucy. First one being is this bone right here, which is the leg bone of Lucy, had a certain curve to it, which is more along the lines of humanity than it is with apes, humanity, people, however you want to call it. Well, if you look very close at this bone that was actually found, it's in 3 pieces. That's the bone they actually found, is in 3 pieces. So any idea of some sort of curvature is speculation. She also made a point of the hole in the bottom of Lucy's skull being in a different spot.
Let's stick with the leg. Let me respond to the leg.
Right.
As I understand it, and I'm not an archaeologist.
Well, that's the bones, and that's not coming from a Christian site. That's coming from
right. As I understand, her point was that the shape of the bone has to do with the posture. It has to do with weight distribution and the posture of the animal.
But she said it was curved, more like a human's is, as opposed to different with an ape's.
Yeah.
And coming to that conclusion, my point is this: coming to that conclusion is from presupposition as opposed to evidence, because that leg right there is in 3 pieces.
Okay.
To try to say that that's curved is coming from your presupposition.
Okay, you said that. So, 2 points. One is that at this point in time, when they found one skeleton, you've got the evaluation of people within that field who had information that a layperson couldn't have. I mean, people that are in archaeology can see, or paleontology can identify very small differences. It's amazing just by knowing the physiology and the anatomy of what causes what. For you and I to sit here and say that looks like a curve or that doesn't look like a curve, that doesn't mean too much. So number one, you've got to realize that the people who are doing this stuff have a lot more information to work with than we are working with.
No, I have the same information as far as that leg goes. It's in 3 pieces.
You don't have the same information. Get yourself a 4-year degree in paleontology and you will have the same information.
I don't need presupposition, somebody telling me what to think. What I can do is I can look at this picture and I can see that bone's in 3 pieces.
All right. And you're putting that up against a 4-year.
I've got lots of things to talk about with Lucy. I've only gotten to that
Let's just talk about the leg.
Okay.
You're putting up 4 years of paleontology education.
Why do I have to have 4 years of paleontology to tell whether or not the bone's in 3 pieces or not? I can see that myself, that it's in 3 pieces.
Okay, so you are.
And putting that to my point is this: like Billy said, most of the skeletons they find are in pieces, and they have to assemble it.
How many of these skeletons do we have now?
Lots of them. This is the best one.
How many skeletons of Lucy do we have
I think
now?
they said 300. That's debatable. I think they said 300, but Leakey says that's debatable. Richard Leakey says, as a matter of fact, Richard Leakey does not think that Lucy is in the line of humanity. He doesn't think so.
Yeah,
and there's reasons for that as far as
we'll tell people to go look that one up.
Look it up, because there's reasons. There's reasons as far as the dating methods that he found in 1470, which is another fossil. Yeah. But okay, so can I move on to the next one?
The single point I want to just finish up with is that that was the indication at the time, and now with current information, being that we have more people to look at it and we have many more skeletons.
I looked when I found this, and that's the best example.
Yeah.
That I found. Now, do they have one they haven't published yet?
One person against. one
this
person would
consensus
agree
thing, Phil,
against
you go with?
consensus with 1,000
Okay.
paleontologists.
If you want to go to, we're getting off on rabbit trails here. You want to go with consensus?
No,
Okay.
we can do that, but let's not
All right.
now. I don't want to take you off track. So take me to your next point.
Yeah, and
Okay.
my points are here is
I made my points. Now go.
bias, but let's go on to the next one. Billy also said that the skull had a hole in it where the spinal column comes out of, and in Lucy it was more pushed, I don't remember what's forward or backwards, but it's more towards the humanity side. Miss Lucy,
And that
skull.
also went to walking stance, is that right?
right, Miss Lucy's skull doesn't have the bottom. Doesn't have it. So that again, this is the actual picture. I don't know how well this is going to come across, it's not in color. But this is the actual picture of Lucy's skull. The dark parts are the parts they actually had. The white parts are the parts that they manufactured. This is the jaw, 4 teeth. This is a cheek, and this is the top of the head. That's what they actually found. They did not find the base of the skull that would have the hole for a spinal column to come out of. So Billy trying to say that we have proof that Lucy had a spinal column hole that was more like humanity, again, that's fabrication. That's not evidence.
Okay, my question here is, did you do the research to find out when that statement was made in the scientific community?
About that.
Because you're suggesting that with one skull without a bottom.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the hole isn't in the spot for the humans. It is.
Kelly, let me finish my sentence.
All right.
You just said that the skull is a top skull without the bottom to make that whole angle evaluation.
Right. This is what they found.
Right.
There's no dispute about that. That's what they found.
Billy is saying that the current information or collective information is that exists.
Oh, well,
So,
it's not anywhere on the internet. If they have it somewhere,
have
that's
you
okay. But they don't have it on the
researched
internet.
when they figured that out and what skull they based it on?
Well, she was basing it on this. I'm talking about Billy's comments. She was basing it on Lucy.
Billy had a complete skull.
Yeah, I know, fabricated one. She said that.
Yeah, it's a cast.
It's a cast.
Yeah, of
which
course.
involves
The real ones in the
which
museum.
involves interpretation from your preconceived notions of what you're going to find. Just like it was with Mr. Wyatt.
Okay.
Mr. Wyatt believed this is what he was going to find. He had a preconceived notion when he went out, and he found something that he thinks evaluates it. Might,
Okay, so
as I said,
I'm going to throw out an assumption here.
Let me just finish.
Go ahead.
There might be a hole in Miss Lucy's skull if you ever found it.
Yeah.
But to say that you found it, you didn't.
Okay.
You didn't find it because it's not there. This is what part of the skull
So
they have.
I'm going to assume that she is not an unintelligent person,
I think she just has a presupposition that she's hard to get over.
and she is making her evaluation based on the collection of knowledge. So what do you think her perspective is?
Scientism, I think, is her perspective. But
So you think she wants to make it true?
Yeah, just like Mr. Wyatt wants to make this true. You seem to think, and this is, tell me if I'm wrong, you seem to think that the only people that have a presupposition and a passion to prove something right is Christians or people who believe in God.
I don't.
They're on both sides.
I don't.
Billy's
see
made
it.
several statements that made me believe that she has no intention or has no intuition as to that it's wrong. And I think the same thing of Mr. Wyatt. I think he believes this is it, and he's going to be kind of hard-headed to somebody tell him it's not. But my point is this: in humanity,
I think it's much more severe on the non-science side
don't.
because you have much less to work with. You have many more assumptions. You have a lot more that's based on tuition. You have a lot less education to base the decisions on.
that was proven not to be true because that's the same thing that Billy said.
Proven not to be true by who?
Billy said that there was no archaeologists that are Christian. She said that in the interview. Me and you both know, Phil, that's not true. She said that I didn't know there was any archaeologists that were Christian.
Okay,
There's lots.
That's different from saying
There's
there aren't
lots of
any. So she didn't
lots
know.
of
She didn't know of any. That's so funny. Okay.
There's lots of them. So the idea that the only people that have the intelligence to figure things out is, and I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't want to make statements of your assumption, assuming things you don't say.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like you're going that direction. That the only educated people that can evaluate these things are the ones that came from a certain point of view.
No, let me back this down to a lower level then, if that's what you're getting at. And it really goes into all the way down to supernatural versus naturalism. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're not on level ground about naturalism, because you believe that your evaluation of what is natural, example being the curvature of that bone, is equal to an evaluation of an educated consensus within that field. But okay, so that's number one.
Well, Richard Leakey doesn't think it is either, but okay.
So that's number two, and enough of that.
Okay.
And then so the other element of, is there supernatural, and to what degree do we have validity in?
Yeah, we're kind of rabbit trailing off. Can I get to the rest of what I was talking about with Lucy, just so we have a complete designation?
All right.
Okay, so the hole's another one. Okay, the head, and I'm just talking about Lucy, and I looked online to see if there was any better examples. There wasn't any found. Can there be some out there? Show me. Show me them. What she was getting at was Lucy had this hole in her spinal column that more lined up with humanity than humans than with apes. Well, of course, that was another assumption because it's not there. Further, the hip joint was supposed to be more, and it was. I brought the Nova article that they interviewed Mr. Lovejoy and Mr. Johansson. I brought it here. Okay. And Mr. Johansson came to Lovejoy. He said, I think I found a knee joint, which was 2.5 miles away from when they found Lucy, but they found another one there with Lucy. I think this is more human-like than ape-like. And why are they around at this supposed time frame? And they said, okay, well, this is pretty good evidence. So they both went back, and they found this. So they had started assembling this, and Lovejoy, as will be explained in the Nova article here, said that the hip joints look like they're chimpanzee hip joints. But that's the word. They were assembled that way. Now, as you can see, there's really not much of the hip joint here. There's just one side. But they assembled it that way because that's what it looked like it came together as. And these are people that are in the field that do it as a living. Lovejoy came along and said, that doesn't look much like a human hip joint. We need to change this. You can read it right in here. Sure. We need to change this to look more like a human hip joint. You can watch the video of them shaving it down so it looked more like human hip joint.
So
my point is, the evidence that was found didn't support what they were trying to do, and they changed the evidence around. Now, if you want to do that,
so
okay.
This is why.
But it's in the article.
This is exactly why I promote consensus and not individual scientific opinion.
I don't know. I'm just going by the skeleton.
Because anybody can be wrong.
I agree.
Especially individual scientists, not especially, but including individual scientists. So even the best of us, has a bias. There are many examples in science of people having a hypothetical opinion or a theoretical opinion, whichever, and holding to it when it's wrong, and it really doesn't fall away until the next generation basically wins out, because it's like, is this Earth the center of the Earth? Well, no. I mean, the center of the universe. Well, no, but the people who believed at the time never really changed their mind. The next generation carried the proper information forward because the evidence was better, and then there was more of it. So, citing one article is
well, what I'm doing is I'm just evaluating what Billy said, and I'm going by the evidence
of Nova article.
There's a lot of it there.
Okay. In Search of Human Origins, Part 1, this is Nova. You can look it up. I'll put the link up. This is how science is supposed to work. When you've got someone who disagrees with what the opinion is, especially at this point when we have one skeleton and one guy's opinion, you have an evaluation, you have opinions by other scientists, people at the same level of knowledge of what a bone looks like and what the angles look like, and what a little indent looks like and what it means. All those things get evaluated by everybody in that field. They have symposiums, they argue about which is the right interpretation, and there it sits with now 5 different interpretations. There it sits, right, for that period of time. And none of those are better than the others necessarily. It's all because everybody has different interpretations. Now you give it more time, you get more people to evaluate it, more evidence comes in. The method is that the incorrect stuff gets washed out, the bias gets discovered. So this is why you go with more information. This is why you sort of hold your opinion and you go with more information as it collects. Now, the news doesn't work that way. The news media picks up on something like this, and if we had this on the news now, it'd say, we found the missing link, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how news works, but that's not correct. That's not how science works. And science is the best tool we have for the most likely explanation of what is true, because it is self-correcting.
If bias leads,
so what
it's
you're doing
self-correcting,
is you're making an argument that this piece of information that came in, was it 40s?
That skull was found in 70,
Okay.
72,
way
or
off
somewhere
there.
along in there.
So you're making the argument that this single specimen found at that period of time is equivalent to the argument that Billy is making today with current scientific consensus.
No, she was arguing on Lucy. She was arguing that Lucy had this, that, and the other thing.
She had a complete cast, which did not come from.
The complete cast was I agree. They had examples of Lucy in the museums. How close was that? My point. How close was that to the find? It wasn't close at all. Lucy had human-like fingers, and another thing she said, fingers, they're not. But in this artwork that toured around the country at museums that supposedly represented Lucy was artwork.
Okay.
Pure artwork. It had, and I understand they have to do something, to make it look nice or whatever, but trying to put skin on and had a little bit of hair, but not very much, that's assumptions.
Okay.
That's bias coming out in how you want to portray what you found.
Okay.
And that's my point.
So
just as Ron Wyatt was trying to portray that this was an ark,
okay.
they were doing the same thing here. They were trying to portray something that the actual evidence does not support.
Okay,
the hip bone is...
So we've both made our arguments. Let's move on to the next topic.
Well, that was my main one, but okay. There was teeth as
So
well.
Otherwise,
you want to go into the teeth?
We'll go in circles. No, because the issues are the concept is the same. The concept is the same.
You
I don't
wanna go into
want to
teeth?
argue in circles.
You
So.
want to go into the teeth? I was hoping we'd go into the teeth, but okay. Right.
It's all the same concepts.
Well, yeah,
So-
that Lucy didn't really represent much of a change from apes when you actually look at the evidence. And the teeth were the same. The teeth of chimpanzees and humans, at least the portion that they actually had, one set of 4 teeth on the extreme back end. What you can evaluate from that isn't much, because the human teeth and the chimpanzee teeth look an awful lot. Now, when you get into the incisor, I don't need a 4-year degree.
And then we'll have this
I
discussion.
don't need to have a
again.
4-year degree to read, Phil. I can read and I can evaluate. I have a brain.
And that makes you less capable of making this evaluation than someone who does.
Are you a biologist?
Again, I'm not making the argument from a biologist. That's why I brought in a paleontologist to make the point.
And they
the
can
point
be-
is made. Let's move on to the
And my
next
point
thing,
is that they
please.
can be just as biased as anybody else is. Okay.
We disagree on that. So
Okay.
let's move on.
Okay, that one's... We'll leave that one away. You're already irritated enough. We'll leave that one
No,
away.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
You are, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was a
Throw me the
joke.
worst.
Okay, this is a joke, so I want you to take it that way.
Okay.
My example of a, what's the word you used? Presuppositionalist. That's meant to be a joke, Phil. Me and your friends, it's meant to be a joke. Presuppositionalist. Saying that science dispelling superstition for 2,300 years. I think
Yeah.
I think that's a bit of a...
It's not a presupposition. Again, I defined that already.
It's a bias statement, but okay.
I think it's basically a statement of fact, but
That's
okay.
for me and you disagree, obviously.
All right. We'll leave it.
Okay, so Marlene had, I don't know, you want to go on to something else, that's fine with me.
What did you have to think of the role of philosophy? You said you had some comments on the role of philosophy in science and religion. And I'm not sure, I never really got your feedback on that topic.
Well, I think empirical evidence comes into play when you're doing philosophy, at least it can. You can evaluate things that you can actually test and plug it into things that you can't test.
But when you do that, you're doing science, not philosophy.
Sure. The empirical part is science. But there's trying to evaluate from empirical what might have happened. Let's pick one that you have to do on a philosophical basis. The start of the universe. That's something that we don't know. It's happened a long darn time ago. Whenever however you think that distance was, happened a long darn time ago, and all we have to do now is go by and look what's here and see what adds up the best to how that might have started. And that's you're venturing into philosophy then, because you're not able to test it.
I want to steer us away from that one because I'm not sure that's quite a philosophical.
Okay, I've been blabbing for the whole time. You talk for a while, Phil. Let's do that.
I'm not sure that's a philosophical issue. Yeah, you're right. We're at the edge of being able to put our toes into that realm, and again, you and I are not able to have that conversation because we would need like Hawking here and several people of his ilk. So
see, I don't agree with that, but okay, we can talk about it, and you can read what they have to say.
We can talk about it, but what you and I can't do is make an evaluation that it is as valid as they could. So let's pick a different example.
As far as the math and that kind of stuff goes, you're right. I can't do the math they do. But when they reach a conclusion, you can evaluate their conclusion and see what sense it makes based on what others know that are in the same field know. You can evaluate those things and see.
Can we pick another topic?
Yeah, okay, let's pick another topic.
So the point I was wanting to make in the philosophy thing was that when you have something that can be only evaluated by philosophy, let's pick something that is we can't test naturally. Okay, so I don't know what would be a good one.
Love.
Well, that's abstract. That's another concept.
Can't test it naturally, but okay.
But I mean, okay. Did
something on the emotional scale?
Did the snake talk in the Bible?
Okay.
We don't have a witness. We don't have cameras. There's just no video,
right.
Whatever.
Okay, so if you're going to go down that road, I want to go down that road too. So let's start with this one, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Then I'll ask one that's similar.
So the idea is that really the evaluation of this concept is a thought experiment, if you will. Right? Did this thing happen? Or is this thing true?
Right.
When you've got philosophy, when you've got no science available, you cannot test something. There's no access to test it.
How could you test whether, I mean, anybody spoke for that matter past, 1,000 years ago? And I'm probably exaggerating. Did anybody spoke? I mean, you'd think they did because they wrote something down. But my point is that you have to go into...
pick an example where there is no physical evidence.
Right, you have to go into philosophy to determine that. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So at that point, philosophy is limited in what it can do because all it can do is speculate, and it applies logic to what it has to make sure that there's some consistency to what's being said. You can't make a philosophical argument that the third moon in the fifth planet on the sixth galaxy over is made of pink squirrels,
Or the Earth is held up by turtles.
And then have that to be a valid, most likely to be true argument. So philosophy has its limits, even though it's a value, it's a valid tool.
And me and you would agree that philosophy and logical things would limit into the material world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, assuming some consistency within the physics.
But I'm just saying that would apply in the material world.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right. Now, so if we add there's an example. There's a documentary on Netflix right now called "Is Genesis History?" And
that's
And one of the arguments that they make when they go outside and they look at the stars and they say the stars are so many trillions of years away, it would take so many billions of years for the light to get here, how could that be? And they don't bring in an expert, they bring in a guy whose personal opinion is that, and I don't know where he got it from, he may have heard it from someplace, but...
I'm trying to remember his name, I can't think of his name.
It doesn't matter, it's the concept I'm trying to sell here, or talk about.
Ray Comfort.
Okay.
That's his name. I mean, I like it, but that's his name.
Yeah, it's just made me laugh.
Okay.
But thanks. And this person brings up the idea that the light must have traveled at a different time in the past for it to be, the universe to be 6,000 years old and us to see the light. So he basically made, this is philosophy basically, where he just took a concept. Well, there's two ways to look at it. It can either be philosophy, or it's just an idea that has no basis to it, and then you go then look for evidence to the argument, or you can add a supernatural element to it, saying there's a supernatural cause, in which case you have no ability to put legitimacy to your supernatural cause because you have no access to that environment.
Right.
So what bothers me is that when people work within the supernatural realm, for example, saying that God has the ability to stop the earth and things like this, or create a global flood, things that are just not possible by the laws of physics in the natural world.
You disagree on that, but that's okay. At least
no, they can't. It can't be done without bringing in a supernatural. It's supernatural.
Well, of course, the whole story behind.
So the idea that the supernatural explanation is plausible is, it seems to me like it would be incorrect. You are putting more validity to that than it deserves. It deserves the validity of a concept. It's like if you have a hypothesis in science, but you have no way to test it, that's as far as you go. You go to hypothesis, it's an idea, and there it sits and goes no further. Now, if supernatural truly exists, which it could, and we have absolutely no access to it, you cannot take it past that idea. You cannot legitimately take it past that idea of just an idea.
Okay, well, you brought up a bunch of different stuff there.
If someone can grab me a pen out of my case, by the way.
I stole Phil's pen.
Yeah.
So we have one. But we can.
It's in the little back drawer there.
But that might.
Yeah, just in the back of the list.
Okay, so you brought up light travel, and I hear that a lot. And Ray Comfort would not be the one that I would go to get an explanation for it.
I would agree. So go to Jason Lyle.
I am going to go exactly where I'm going to go. And let me first say this.
Let people know who Jason Lyle is.
Jason Lyle is a Christian theoretical physicist, I think, isn't he?
He's a
cosmologist.
He's an astrophysicist.
Astrophysicist, cosmologist.
Young Earth creation.
And as well, Russell Humphreys is in the same boat. And their idea is the same one as what Einstein said. Einstein said we have to assume the one-way speed of light. That's not something we can measure. Einstein said the same thing. You can look it up.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, he did.
I've never heard it from Einstein.
Okay. Well, he said it. And there's reasons for it. Look at Jason Lyle. He's on my website, areopagos.com. I'll bring in some cards in case you guys want them. And Jason Lyle said the same thing. There's no way to measure the one-way speed of light. We have measured the two-way speed of light, and it does appear to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 186,000 miles a second. But let me approach this from two angles. Okay, there's problems. I assume you're going to go to the point where light travel doesn't allow for the universe to be the age that I'm requesting or believe it to be.
No, not at all. I'm going to the concept of that you're when you give these alternate theories, hypotheses, that you're putting validity to them that is equal to
all right. So let's
consensus of educated people within the
okay.
field.
Let's go to the educated people in the field, shall we? So there's a light travel problem for atheists as well. For even people that believe that the universe is 13.5 billion years old, there's a light travel problem for them too, because the universe has the cosmic background temperature that's the same. And even the cosmologists say the same thing. The only way that could happen is for the light to travel back and forth. You don't have time for that to happen. It's 92 billion light years across. You don't have time for the light to travel to equal out the temperature that's in the universe. They've come up with something called the inflation theory.
I don't know the number. It's 92 billion years across now?
Yeah.
Light years?
Yeah. Across. Not distance this way, but across. That's
the same in all directions,
reading it,
but okay.
Well, just read it. It's there to read. So they came up with the idea of inflation. You were talking a few minutes ago, Phil, about stuff that doesn't add up, okay? And they came up with a solution for this. This fact that the light doesn't...
Do you want me to correct you as you go along?
Well,
or would you
can try, but you can look it up too. You might want to look it up before you start trying to correct me, okay?
Because we get too off track if I don't.
Well, I don't know. You brought it up, not me.
I'll make small corrections and try not to take you off track.
I listened to you throughout, Phil. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't do that.
But if we get too far down because when you throw something out that's incorrect and then it gets six.
You threw
six
something out that was
incorrections,
incorrect, and I sat and listened. I just waited.
I will try to do this quickly and not interrupt your flow.
Okay.
Okay. And make it small. So
what I've said.
The 186,000 is. I'm sorry. The size of the universe. The microwave background radiation comes from a time when the universe was much younger and much smaller.
But it's not. It shouldn't be universe. It shouldn't be distributed the same throughout. It shouldn't be that way. And I'm just going by the cosmologist statements. That's what they say.
Uniformity early
Shouldn't
on
be that.
has been a puzzle in physics.
Yeah.
So,
and
go ahead.
now they've come up with the idea of inflation. The idea that things moved faster than the speed of light at some point, and then it stopped moving that way. Why it started moving faster than the speed of light, they don't know. Why it stopped moving faster than the speed of light, they don't know. But they have a problem, and they're coming up with supernatural solutions faster than the speed of light movement to try to explain it.
Are you saying that the expansion?
Yeah, this is not
This
is not Jason Lyell's idea nor Phil Humphrey's idea.
Are you saying that
this is what's the guy's name?
For my understanding, are you saying that the expansion after the Big Bang was faster than the speed of light?
They're calling it inflation.
That inflation was faster than the speed of light?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know this, so
Okay.
I can't.
It's just stuff that I look up because I'm a geek.
Okay.
Me and Jim talk. He's an astrophysicist or rocket scientist, all the rest of the stuff he is. Yeah. We talk. He has some different viewpoints than I do, but it's still interesting to talk to him. I take information from lots of different people, even when I don't agree with them completely. But the explanation for it is that things traveled faster at the speed of light at some different distant point in the past. And how that started, they're not sure why it started that way, nor are they sure how it stopped traveling faster than the speed of light. It's just an explanation to try to get around the fact that there's not enough time for light to travel and equal things out. The cosmic background radiation to equal it out. So the idea that the Christians are the only ones that come up with these ideas that seem out of whack, like you're talking about the talking snake, which I think was what started this off. They have the same problem. There's a larger universe than than light can travel to equal out the background temperature. That's a problem. And they're coming up with ideas and solutions that you would call supernatural. Traveling faster than the speed of light for a period of time and then having it stop. Why did it begin that way? Why did it stop that way, other than to explain what we see? And try to make up a reason why our version of light travel is okay, and somebody like Jason Lyell, who says that the one-way speed of light is instant, which, by the way, would solve the problem, that's wrong. Yeah. He's appealing to a supernatural thing that and again, look it up. Einstein said the same thing. We can infer the one-way speed of light, but we cannot prove it, is what he said. Okay. We have to infer it, because you can't prove it.
It's a little difficult to talk about it, because neither of us are really qualified to talk about it.
I can read. I read this stuff all the time, and I don't have to have a scientist.
I can't argue on the expansion speeder than the faster light, because I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
But that's just claiming ignorance. So that's fine.
I would just say look it up.
What a scientist does, and what Lyell, when he's working correctly, would be to observe something. The microwave background radiation was observed. That was a verification of what Einstein's law, and I don't know if it's generalized or general relativity or special relativity offhand, predicted that would happen. So that was actually a verification of Einstein's laws. So that's number one. There is a question in physics of why the universe is not completely uniform if you have a singularity center. So there is still speculation about what exactly happened at the beginning. So what you have is people making hypotheses as to what those examples are. And what you're claiming is that that's an invalid thing to do. What is
No,
that's
I'm
not
just,
invalid.
I'm just saying that both of them have to appeal to supernatural.
No.
Okay, well, how do you go faster than the speed of light?
There's a distinction between. I don't know the answer. Neither of us know the answer.
I'm just saying that that's a supernatural
There's a distinction
request.
between what is supernatural and what is unknown.
Okay, let me try to make what I'm
Wait,
getting at
did you
here.
hear that?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, because I was thinking.
Did you hear that?
Go ahead.
There
Fire
is a
away.
distinction between what is supernatural and what is unknown.
Okay.
If we don't know what causes the expansion, I'm going to just assume that you're correct on this because I don't know.
Okay.
So let's just logically assume that this is true, that the original early universe expansion was greater than the speed of light. 2 points. 2 points was we're moving away faster. I think that's a different thing, but I don't know. So
Well, that only relates. Let me make sure that it's on tape. What I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the start of the universe. That's
yeah.
There's lots of theories about that too.
Background
But they're talking
radiation
about
occurred
the-
at about 300,000 years. I
the
believe.
inflation rate. The idea of the inflation thing is because right now we have no naturalistic explanation as to why the universe has a common background radiation.
I think it has something to do, and Brian, forgive me if I'm wrong on this one. I think it has something to do with a distinction between particles and waves, which are limited by, which can only travel maximum at the speed of light, and the expansion of space itself, which does not have that restriction. I think it's in there somewhere.
Well, I've read inflation a little bit, and
So let's leave it
one of
there.
the two of them were traveling faster than the speed of light. And you're making a distinction there. I'll have to look it up.
That's
Distinction on-
just came to my memory. But what I'm saying is that unknown does not imply supernatural. Supernatural may or may not. Unknown is also perfectly valid. When something is unknown, you don't jump to yes natural, yes supernatural being the more likely. You stay on unknown until you have a reason that is outside of preference and bias to go in any direction. You see what I'm saying? What you're telling me is that you're saying that scientists are pushing to the natural side and believers are pushing to the supernatural side.
Well, you made a. I don't know. You probably didn't mean to do it, but you said scientists, meaning that they're all on one side. They're not. And believers are on the other side.
No,
it's not
no.
true.
I'm saying
they're
that
mixed.
it is invalid to go to supernatural because we don't know. If you sit down and ask most scientists and get down to the nitty-gritty about what is absolute knowledge, they will not tell you that that supernatural doesn't exist. They will tell you that they have no way of knowing. So to say that that's as equally valid as any other position, you can't go there. You're not allowed to go there. It's like a closed door that may or may not have something behind it. You are making assumptions of what's behind that door is more likely to be true.
Well, no,
and you have no access to that other than philosophical thought.
I don't know where that all went, but okay.
doesn't make
You're
sense.
you're assuming that I'm going through a closed door, and I don't think it is. I think once you
I
start,
assume that you're looking through a closed door.
okay, but I think once
Because
you're trying to start,
because you have a preference for a God to exist.
Well, and you have a preference for a God not to exist.
I don't.
Yeah, you
Not
do.
at all.
Phil, you sent me a note on Facebook saying that when you go to a scale of 1 to 7 on whether you believe in God or whether you don't, you're a 7. That means you don't believe. You have a preference
That takes us to the. No, that's not a preference. That takes us back to the belief definition.
Okay.
That is a result of a conclusion based on every bit of information I have and an analysis to the best of my ability. That is a conclusion. That is subject to change at all times.
Okay.
That is not a preference.
Okay.
Everything
You
I
use the word you
believe, everything.
I'm just saying, I
No,
call the
you're
preference,
missing-
and you
you're
use a
missing
different
the
word, that's
concept.
fine.
You're missing the concept. You know, this is the one of the core differences in what belief is.
Okay.
Belief is a conclusion based on what you know. When you are subject to not moving off of that position, that's when you are incorrect. Okay? That's where, I wouldn't say you're incorrect, because you may be correct. Your conclusion may be correct. But you are susceptible to not being corrected. If you are wrong, new information comes around, and you are not willing to shift your position, then you are more likely to be incorrect than correct. When you've got a believer,
yeah.
There are very strong reasons for wanting to believe. They're very strong, and I'm talking about. And you've told me that the cost of eternity. Your eternal life, right? That's one
and there's
cost
strong,
that you believe in.
Let me just interrupt for a second. There's
I'm almost done with my sentence.
Okay,
I'm almost done with my
okay,
sentence.
all right, go ahead.
That, and then the idea of having life after death, the idea of seeing loved ones again, these are all very, very strong motivations.
Of course.
And we are susceptible to.
Of course they are.
To biases and it's only when you realize those biases and factor them into the equation.
Those are biases according to you, Phil. Those are according to you.
No.
Yeah, that is. Now, as far as the afterlife and all the rest of that stuff goes, that's a different subject than I'm talking about today. I'm talking about the topic of there being a God. And you're getting off into whether there's an afterlife or not. I believe there is. But you're talking about different subjects now.
I think my point is made, so I'm going to just...
Yeah, no, you went...
So go ahead and take it wherever you
want.
want to
I should have been writing some stuff down because now I forgot. Yeah. Okay, so you're pitting, and this is something you do regularly, so you pit scientism, against these believer people.
I pit scientific consensus, yes.
Well, okay, let's go with consensus.
Okay.
Rebecca asked me that question when very first one that we had. She said 97% of scientists don't believe in God. That's not true, right? 54% or 53, I think it is. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
53% of scientists believe there is a God. So if you're going with consensus, then you need to change your mind. Now, I'm not talking about the Christian God. I'm talking about a God. 53%. It was 33% believe in the God of the Bible, and another 18 or 17 believe in a different God. So there are 53% of scientists believe there is a God. So that's a consensus. High 80% of the general public believe there's a God. Now, can you say that they're, stupid? Okay, if you want to.
No.
But I think those are.
I don't do that.
I know you don't do that, but a lot of people do. Okay, so I'm just saying.
I'm not one of
them. But those are the consensus points that you've brought up several times, and the consensus that you're trying to get at isn't there. Now, do they believe every single thing that is portrayed in the Bible? I don't know. Probably the 17% don't, but they believe there is a causal agent, a God. And feel free to look that up, because actually Scott, was that his name? Scott? The guy that used to be here, do the sound. He was sitting there when I made the statement, and Rebecca said, I said, well, I don't think that's true. I think it's 50-50 or so. And Scott said, well, let's check it out. So he looked it up on his computer, on his phone, these things, which I don't know how to do yet, and came to the conclusion that 53% of scientists, labeled scientists, believe there is a God. So that's a consensus that doesn't fit.
My turn?
Yep.
Okay. I tend not to try to push statistics because it can be a he said, she said thing all the time where people will pull the numbers that benefit their position. So having said that, within the 53% of scientists, there are different numbers, and you can pick different studies that show anywhere from 53, I'll assume that's accurate, to 97, and we've seen those numbers thrown out on both sides. So for sure we know that in the general public it's very high, somewhere around 90%. I'm not sure how it is. It might be a little less currently when you factor in the millennials. The newer polls will start to show that, but it's still going to be over 50%. Now, on the public, belief is different than what's true. So we can put that one aside for now.
Well,
since we were talking about scientific,
let's agree that it can be.
Since we were talking about scientific consensus, this is the point of this particular conversation is the consensus opinion on the scientists. When you take something like that, and I'll just go with your 53% believe in God.
Okay. One of those would be the director of the Human Genome Project.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's an excellent example of why the belief is incorrect. So I would recommend reading The Language of God by Francis Collins.
So you have somebody that's got multiple degrees.
Yeah.
Very smart guy.
Yes.
But you figure he's wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
Go read my.
Seems like that was.
Go read my column on believance, which is not based on my opinion. I'm telling the audience.
I've read it.
I'm telling the audience. Okay. Look at believeinreality.com and look at the article on believance. That is not based on my opinion. That is based on much study on the scientific consensus of psychology and other things. And we know that belief, the process of belief and the biases that we have in our head is independent from intelligence. We know that very smart people can believe the wrong thing. Jason Lyle is also an excellent example of this to an extreme. So anyway, so the consensus, 53% of scientists believe in God, is a very general statement. I don't think the number is that low. I'm not gonna trade barbs and trade Google searches to determine that. But you can't throw that out as evidence of something very specific that we're talking about, whatever is a little specific thing.
I was just answering your remark. It's consensus, and it's just not consensus. Now, which ones they believe in, I don't know, but they believe in a God, and the consensus.
Okay, so let's talk about Francis Collins.
Okay.
For a second.
I'm not a big. Let me just say this up front. If you want to go there with him, I'm not a big fan of Francis Collins.
Doesn't matter.
I'm not a big fan of his.
Doesn't matter. We're talking concepts.
Okay, but I want to start off this off by saying, I'll say it to the camera, I'm not a big fan of Francis Collins. You rarely hear me bring him up. And the reason why I bring it up this time is because you were pushing down the road of education.
Then you give me a name. Give me a scientist who...
No, I'll go with, let's talk about Francis Collins.
Give me a scientist who believes in God and yet practices what was considered conventional science. Give me a name.
Okay, let's go with Francis Collins. I'm fine with him.
Okay.
He's the director of the Human Genome Project. He's the first one that mapped out the genome.
Correct.
Okay.
He was head of the project. Obviously, we got to give some credit to all the people.
Well, sure, there's lots of other people
on
on
the team,
but he was the head of the project.
But he was the head of the project. So you really get into a question there of what does his belief in God do to the science? How much of the science can he do, given that he holds a belief in God? And in that particular case, he can do the science. There's no conflict.
I mean, you would agree on that,
right? So, because you can be the scientist and you can do it, because nothing in his science will counteract his belief in God. I'm not sure I don't think he's a biblical literalist, but I don't really know.
As far as I know, he's a Catholic, but he believes in the.
So that's what
he believes in the basic tenets of Christianity.
So that allows him to operate. Okay, even if he's incorrect, it doesn't matter. Because the science that he is doing is not affected by that particular belief. Okay. So yes, some people can.
I think the science he was doing, if it had some massive contradiction,
we'll go
having God around,
that's the next example.
Then it would affect him.
That's the next example to go to. So now let's find one where it does contradict.
Okay.
Okay. So let's go with Jason Lyle as an example then.
Okay.
He finds out that he believes that the Bible is literally true. He's a literalist. He is a college-educated, legitimately educated astrophysicist.
What is the highest that you can graduate? That's what he got. Kind of cum laude?
I don't know, but he's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
He's a very smart guy. And yet he believes the universe is 6,000 years old.
He does that. And he has reasons why he believes it.
Right.
And there's lots of them.
It doesn't make him right. But see, this is a problem.
Doesn't make him wrong either.
Because now his science, his belief affects his science. So
well, it's that's according to the
so what he can do,
dogma.
What he can do is as an individual, he has hypothesized various ways around this, like altering the speed of light over distance and time, or the speed of light traveled at different times, or I think the one way speed, which as I understand it, it's like the light travels at an equal speed in one direction, and the other direction it moves instantaneously.
He's got a phrase for it that I can.
He's got some hypotheses, and this is perfectly fine. This is how science works.
He's a mathematician, and he does it. He works it out that way.
This is how science works. You put forward a hypothesis, and then your next task is to go find ways to test this hypothesis. Okay.
Well, that's the point of the one-way speed of light, is when Einstein said the same thing. There's no way to test it. Otherwise, he could be proven wrong. And if you want to say it's unfalsifiable,
so when
you're right, it is.
When you get into that point of never being able to find a way to test your hypothesis, you are in philosophy, my friend.
Well,
you cannot take that and go to schools and say, teach the controversy. This is probably true.
But you can teach
because
that
what Jason Lyle does is he goes to his Bible and he sees if the science contradicts what the Bible says. And when it does, he goes back and he says, oh, I must be wrong until it matches the Bible. So you see what he's doing?
Yeah, he has a preconceived philosophy. And the same that's what I was pointing out with this. They had a preconceived philosophy that they wanted to administer to the evidence. He's doing the same thing. Why is it different? Why is it different for, hold on, let me just finish. I listened. Why is it different for the Christian to have a preconceived notion on what the results will be, the same way that this guy had a preconceived notion of what his results are going to be?
Because you're asking a scientist to reinvent the wheel that has already been proven. It's like when we had a discussion about Hovind, right, coming out. I may or may not.
He may not be
willing to talk to him.
He's going to be out.
Seriously, he will not talk to me. I guarantee you, he will never talk to me because he doesn't want to be challenged. But
are you kidding, Phil? He goes to college campuses all the time. He's challenged on a regular basis.
I understand.
I don't know how much more now. He had some problems, as you probably know. But that was his thing. He wanted to go to college campuses, talk to college professors, and talk it out. So to say that he wouldn't be challenged, Phil, that's just nonsense.
Well, then
that's what he does all the time.
Send him.
I don't know whether he'll do it or not. I just opened it up to you to see if you wanted to, because I know he's going to be in California. Whether he comes out or not.
It would be nice, because it would be nice to.
If he had time, he probably will.
Yeah.
Because he's that way. He likes to talk. He's a real amiable guy.
Conversation.
I've met him before, and he's a real friendly guy. He likes to talk.
Okay, so I'm losing my train of thought.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's a 10-minute warning.
10-minute warning? All right. Shoot, I've lost my train of where we started now.
Well, you're talking about Jason Lyle, and I encourage you to look up what Einstein said about the one-way speed of light, okay? All Jason Lyle is saying is that you're saying that to go to school and teach people the one-way speed of light is instant is wrong, because it can't be verified.
Right.
To teach them that it's consistent both ways is wrong, because that can't be verified either.
It has been verified.
No, it hasn't.
Many times.
It has not.
It has been verified.
Okay, listen to me what I said, because I want to get this on right.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not talking about the two-way speed of light. That has been verified. I'm talking about the one-way speed of light, which has
two-way
not.
Has been verified, but
yeah,
one-way
hasn't. They bounced it off the Zoom.
So which one is it?
Bounced it off the moon and
so
came
it can
back.
be both?
No. Listen to what I say.
You just said the two-way
Listen
has
to what I
been
say.
verified.
Get this right. Listen to what I say.
All right.
The two-way speed of light has been verified. They bounced it off something on the moon when they went up there and got it back.
All right.
And it did victor out. The one-way speed of light has never been verified, nor can it be. So you guys can laugh if you want to, but look it up on the internet.
We've got basic
That's
logic.
what it is.
We've got A is true or B is true.
No, not at all.
You're saying situation A and situation B can both be true?
Sure.
Light can have a two-way speed and a one-way speed?
No. Light can travel,
time?
and light does travel at different speeds, Phil.
So
Look this up too. Harvard did the study, and they slowed down the speed of light to 39 miles an hour. Look it up. It's on the internet. 39 miles an hour for the speed of light. So the speed of light does vary. The average speed of light is 186. It does vary.
All right.
And it not only varies, but it will slow down to almost nothing inside a black hole. Light can't escape a black hole. So it does slow down and actually stop. So
I don't believe that's true, but I'll have to read more science. I've got to read more Sean Carroll. So
Jason Lyle, he's not
Because you get in once you get into a black hole, you've got relativistic effects. And that's a different thing.
Well, I'm just talking about the speed of light. The light does
within the
does
frame
disappear.
within the frame
black
of
hole.
reference of the photon itself, it does not change.
It disappears completely inside of a black hole. That's why it's black.
It doesn't disappear. It just goes there within the frame of the
Destroyed
reference.
inside the black hole, so it has no more
Within the
speed
frame
anymore.
of reference of the photon, if you follow the particle and you stay with it, you will be traveling at the same speed. To someone on the outside looking at it going in, it looks like it's changing because we have a difference of frames of reference here. So you can look that one up. Anyways, we're
getting into the weeds here.
Tell you what, let's maybe we should leave it here and then open to the audience to see if there's anything else. Do you have anything else you want to?
There probably was, but I'm old. I forgot.
Yeah, we're old. Okay. We forgot. All right, I think we've done enough damage for the day. We're still friends.
We sparred. We're still good friends.
So this is part of what we want to accomplish here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Hopefully that was somewhat entertaining. We'll take a little bit of a break here and then see if there's any questions.
Okay.
And then we'll switch waters.
You're getting the raw end of the stick, Phil. I finished most of mine.
Yeah, but I got caffeine. So.
Okay.